Ram doesn't ask for Agni Pariksha. In fact, he is with great pain,
Right.
but he has decided he's done with Sita.
Right.
He tells her, you can go where you want. Women need to be part of the decision making. The decisions can't just be handed to them and then
Sure.
said, you just deal with it. Sita's story and Sita's character have not been accurately
Right. It's been very
represented.
Yeah.
It's very patriarchally
Sure,
represented.
sure.
And it is unfair to Sita to portray her like that because she's not like that.
Chitra aunty, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk today.
My pleasure, COVID.
This is the first time I'm interviewing a teacher of mine. I was going through your books the other day and I came across The Conch Bearer, which is your first book that I read 16 years ago when I was 16. So I was just looking at the irony of it all, and here we are 16 years later.
Well, it's wonderful and serendipitous,
Yeah,
I think.
absolutely.
That was a magical book, and
Absolutely.
Forest of Enchantments.
Absolutely,
is a
and I read that as a
magical book.
child. Literally, I was a child, and now suddenly, I'm looking at your books from a different perspective as a man in his 30s. So things have changed quite a bit. So before we get into your book, The Forest of Enchantments, which of course has made waves across the world with your reinterpretation of Sita's story, what is the Forest of Enchantments? I kept asking myself, is it the forest in which Sita spends time with the man she loves? Is it the forest in which she, as an empowered woman, manages to survive even in captivity? Or is it the forest in which, as a single mother, she brings up children in very difficult circumstances? According to you, which one is the Forest of Enchantments?
All of them are the Forest of Enchantments.
Yeah.
And they are enchanting or empowering,
Right.
like they're magical in
Right.
different ways.
Right.
Just like you said, the first one allows her to become really an adult
Yeah.
and have that honeymoon period with
Yeah.
her husband,
Right,
which is
right.
very dear
Sure.
to her,
Sure.
to her heart,
Sure,
and
sure.
which changes her,
Yeah.
and which deepens their bond.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then in Ravan's palace, where she refuses to go into
Right.
any palace,
Right.
any structure,
Right, right.
and then she is imprisoned in the forest in Ashokvan.
Correct.
She draws on the strength within herself that
Yeah.
she never knew she possessed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she is able to survive, not even just survive, but really become victorious over Ravan.
Right.
So that makes her grow in a whole other way. It is still an enchantment,
Right.
right? It is an enchanted space. It is a protected space. The forests are always protected spaces for
sure,
Sita because as
sure.
a daughter of the earth,
Right.
she relates to nature.
Right.
So that was another thing I wanted to bring out, Sita's connection with the natural world,
Sure. Sure.
which then I'm saying is the importance of our connection with the natural world, which in so many ways we are divorced from today in
Right.
our everyday life.
Something I've struggled with all my life is I've grown up in a family where a huge Ram devotee family. In my house, we have a Ram Darbar, and everything revolves around puja towards Sri Ram. And my entire adult life, I've struggled with praying to Lord Ram because we call him Maryada Purushottam.
Right.
We should all aspire to be as idealistic as he was. But from a standpoint of, as a husband, he was somebody who I found very difficult to relate to, because if you are God and you know what's right and wrong, you should be able to tell your praja that you guys may be thinking this, but your thinking is wrong. So I want to get your perspective on worship to Lord Ram in our society, and how do you perceive it from people who are feminists?
What you are talking about was a great dilemma in my own mind as
Yeah.
well as a woman.
Yeah.
How could Lord Ram do that to
Right,
Sita?
right.
We have to remember that Ram and Sita are not God and Goddess, they are avatars. They occupy that special place between gods and humans. And they come down so that they show us, oh, we cannot be like Lord Vishnu, we cannot be like Lord Shiva.
Sure.
They're just a whole other
League of their own.
Yes, it's a league of their
Yeah.
own.
Yeah.
But we can aspire to be like the avatars because
Sure.
they're in between. They have their human sides also. So
sure.
Sita is, I think of her as amazing. She has her human side, and she can still be venerated in spite of her human feelings.
Right.
Ram can still be venerated in spite of his human feelings.
Right.
And I also understood that Ram shows us something that is very true about our human existence. Sometimes we have to choose between choice A, which is good, and choice B, which is good. And
Right.
sometimes we can't just say, well, choice B is better than choice A. We have to say choice B will affect this many people and choice A will affect this many people, and I will just have to go for what is the greater good. And that is what Ram does. He privileges being a king over being a husband.
Right.
What my Sita questions is the fact that he doesn't include her in that decision making. It is possible that coming from a woman's point of view, she might have thought of some other compromise.
Right.
But even if she hadn't, if she had been part of the decision making, it would have made the whole thing a different experience for her.
Sure.
Women need to be part of the decision making. The decisions can't just be handed to them and then said, you just deal with it. And the important thing is, I cannot hate Ram because Sita never hates Ram. And she is really my model in this.
Of course.
And that is what I love about Sita.
Yeah.
She points out what is wrong.
Yeah.
But she does it without hatred. And that's a great lesson for all of us as human beings.
Right. True. You know, the book has, several strong female characters. Which male character, as a man, I'm curious to know, which male character in the book, according to you, is the most empowered, most feminist, most relatable to society today?
My favorite character who relates to Sita is Hanuman. I think he is just the epitome of what all of us, male and female, but certainly he is male. So we should aspire to, because he is so loving, so accepting, so respectful, so willing to stand up for her, even against his beloved Ram. If he had to take sides, he's ready to take Sita's side. And he really listens to her. He embodies that space, I think, that, all of us can aspire to.
I'm going to read a few lines from the book that just really struck to me during the time when he's asking her to prove her innocence. I cannot take back to them a queen whose virtue they'd question, whose purity they disbelieve. They will think that, like my father Dashrath, I swayed from the path of dharma, enchanted by a wife's charms. And Sita sort of decides in the Agni Pariksha that she's going to step in to it, which is very, very different from anything and everything we've seen growing up.
Yes, but this is the original version. This is in Valmiki. Right? So that was another thing that, another reason why I wanted to write the book is that the popular stories as they've come down have been changed. Okay? And some of it is because of like TV and movies and things like that. So Ram doesn't ask for Agni Pariksha. In fact, he is with great pain, but he has decided he's done with Sita. He tells her, you can go where you want. Vibhishan will keep you and take care of you. Sugriva will keep you and take care of you. Or if you have a third option, you can decide where to go.
Free to go.
You will be safe, you will be free, but I can't take you back. End of story. She is the one who says, well, first of all, she says, how can you blame me for something I had no influence over? Ravan took me. And I think this is so important, so relevant to today, because there's so much victim shaming, and not just in our community, all over the world. The whole Me Too movement shows that all those women did not speak up all these years for fear of victim shaming. So I think she is, she speaks out against that. She said, I could not help that. What I could control, how I felt and how I behaved afterwards, I did control. And then she says, I will live my life on my own terms. If you've decided you want nothing to do with me, you have no right to tell me how to live my life after that. And I will end it here honorably in the fire. But when she steps into the fire, the god of fire comes up and proves her innocence, It declares her innocence.
Which is so contrary to, there's a film Lajja, you must have seen it, in which they're doing a Ramlila on stage, and the man asks the woman, played by Madhuri Dixit, that take an Agni Pariksha, and she refuses to and said, you should also go into it with me because we both were separate for all this time. And then the other actress tells her, oh, if only Sita had done the same thing you had done, then no man would ask a woman for her Agni Pariksha today. So it's very contradictory to what...
Absolutely. And that is one of the reasons I really wanted to write this book, because I felt that Sita's story and Sita's character have not been accurately
It's been very
represented.
Yeah.
It's very patriarchally represented.
Sure.
And it is unfair to Sita to portray her like that because she's not like that.
Right.
She doesn't do those things.
Right.
In the very original, I wanted to go back to the original and say, look, this is the original vision of Sita. Okay, the focus was not on her, but even otherwise, whatever we see of her, she's a strong character. She speaks her mind, you know. She stands up for herself. She stands up for other women around her, and nobody can deny the strength of her final decision, which is when Ram does ask for an Agni Pariksha.
Right.
That's the only Agni Pariksha he's asking for.
Right.
And she says no.
Enough.
So she definitely says no to Agni Pariksha.
Right.
And she knows she has everything to lose at that point, but she says no, I can't agree to that.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll pay the price, but I'm not agreeing to
Right.
something that then later other men can ask other women for.
Yeah.
The proof of their innocence in situations where,
Right.
you know, they were not responsible, they
Right.
were victims, they were
Right.
abducted, or
Right.
whatever violences were done to them.
Right. You know, I remember you announced this book very soon after The Palace of Illusions had gotten published, which was your book on Draupadi. And it took about a decade for this to come out.
Oh, yes. So ever since then, you know, I've been thinking about that.
Yeah.
Actually, I've been thinking about this like when I started
Yeah.
Palace of Illusions.
Right. And you had 3 other books that came out in the middle.
There were books that
Yeah.
came out, but
Yeah.
I was working on the research because I
Right.
really wanted to
Right.
do the best I could with the research too.
Right.
So that I didn't want like a modern Sita who has nothing to do or very little to do with the original.
You
Because
wanted
I
to stick
didn't.
to the
Yes, because I didn't want people to say, "Oh, yeah, you've just created this Sita," but that's not the real Sita. So that this can't enter our dialogue on who Sita is.
Right.
So I kept very close to one Ramayana or another.
Yeah. But do you feel like had you written the entire manuscript 10 years ago in one go, as opposed to taking your time, would your perspective have been different with everything that's happening in the world?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I think everything, you know, in 10 years, so much has happened just in terms of women's issues.
Yeah.
It would be different. But it also would be different from like inside me, because I don't think I understood Sita at that point. I was still struggling with, you know, what is this meek and mild heroine that everybody tells us women to be like. So I wasn't ready. I didn't understand her strength.
Yeah.
I didn't understand her resistance,
Right.
which is as dramatic in her quiet way as Draupadi's resistance.
Sure.
You know, Draupadi's resistance is much more
external.
You can
feisty,
see it.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
she's very feisty.
Yeah.
You know, she's there, Vastraharan, you
Right,
know,
she's
her clothes are
cursing
being
them
removed,
and,
she's cursing them and praying to Lord Krishna.
Right,
But
right.
even after she's saved, that's when she curses them.
Right.
And there's an anger in her and a desire for revenge, which is very human.
Yeah.
It's very attractive.
Yeah.
I think people have loved
Right.
her character for
Right.
being like that.
Right.
Now, Sita shows us a whole other kind of strength.
Yeah.
So together, I think Draupadi and Sita really give us 2 wonderful models of women's strength.
You know, there's a line in the book that struck to me where Sita says, I think this is before her marriage, where she says, I had decided that I would not let King Dashrath dictate my life.
Yes.
Indirectly, do you think that kind of happens or not? Or does she stay true to that point? Or what is, I was just curious on your views on that.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was very interested in all the palace intrigue.
Right,
So
right.
I just imagine here is Sita, fairly young woman.
Yeah.
And she's lived in a palace where things are very clear cut.
Right.
There's Janak, there's her mother,
Yeah.
there's no other wives,
Right,
nothing.
right.
And she's really brought up very free
Yeah.
and to be a free thinker as well.
Sure.
And now she's in this Ayodhya palace full of intrigue. And not only the 3 main wives, but lots
Right.
of sub-wives.
Sure,
and
sure.
they're all vying for the king's
Yeah,
attention.
yeah.
So that, and I think there are some funny parts in the book,
Right.
so that he has his own mahal and he
Yeah.
wants peace and quiet. That's where he goes.
Right.
He doesn't want to be with
Which
any
wife
of
does
the-
he start eating dinner with and
Yes.
all those things?
Yes,
yeah.
so there's this big production, right?
Right,
Who
right.
will the king choose to have dinner with?
Right,
Where
right,
will he
right, right.
spend the night?
Yeah.
So Sita, you know, once she figures that out,
Yeah.
she's very she has a lot of emotional intelligence.
Sure.
So
sure.
she realizes that in order to, and Kaushalya is not the favorite wife.
Right.
And
right.
Kaushalya is very sad about
Right,
that.
right.
So Sita decides, I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah.
So then she uses her emotional intelligence to
Right.
kind of begin to change
dynamics
Dashrath's
of-
mind. So
yeah.
I think she is very much I wouldn't say in control, but certainly she's an agent. She has agency in all of these things.
One big discovery for me, and you mentioned this before in your interviews, is Sita being one of the world's first successful single mothers. What are the lessons we can draw from that today? As not just single mothers, maybe single fathers
single
as well.
Parent.
Single parents. Yeah.
She's one of single
Yeah.
parents. So I mean, first of all, we have to see Sita is devastated.
Correct.
All right. So that's the other thing. That sorrow is a part of our lives. We have to accept that
Yeah.
sometimes events happen that we don't control. It is sorrowful. I am not necessarily in the wrong. In Sita's case, she's certainly not in the wrong. She's not tamping those down.
Yeah.
She feels them. It's necessary, it's healthy to feel those emotions.
Right, right.
But she doesn't dwell in them.
Yeah.
Having felt them, she's like, okay, now I have to go forward. Now I have to see what is the best thing I can do. And that was another big lesson I learned from
Right.
Sita. She doesn't waste time, wailing, cursing, this, that.
Right. It's sort of.
She's like, okay, let me focus whatever energies I have to do the best thing I can do. Who am I most responsible for and to? My babies. And I'm going to bring them up the best I can. And through the entire bringing up, she doesn't tell them about their father,
Correct.
who he is,
Correct.
but she never badmouths him.
Yeah.
She never does that. That is a great lesson for all of us
Yeah.
who might find ourselves in the position of being a single parent or
Right.
also in a marriage relationship
Sure.
where often we might be angry with the spouse.
Yeah.
But Sita never badmouths Ram. That is certainly something
Right.
we can all learn.
Right.
That
And-
she focuses on the positive.
And I think the line that struck to me the most is when she is expecting them. She says, I will bring you up in a way to where you will never do to a woman what your father did to me. That to me was sort of, just pricked me right here in terms of the newfound purpose in her life.
Yes, the newfound purpose.
Yeah.
And isn't that a wonderful thing for all parents who are bringing
Right,
up children?
right.
Because a lot of what our young men and women learn are really conditioned into them in childhood.
Yeah.
So if we can give them positive role models, as
Right.
Sita is doing,
Right.
positive virtues to focus on,
Yeah.
positive ways of relating to men and women,
Yeah.
then when they grow up, they really will be. And truly, Love and Kush go on to become great kings.
Yeah.
And we never hear that they ever did
Right.
anything
Right.
to not be
Yeah.
completely fair to women.
Yeah.
I think being brought up by their mother really did have a very positive aspect.
So you had such an illustrious journey, so many books, so many writings. Which book remains closest to your heart and why?
I think I'll have to say two, and
Okay.
they are The Palace of Illusions and The Forest of Enchantments. I see them as my most important projects, right? I really wanted that our great epics should be as relevant to young people today as possible. And I especially have a dear place in my heart for women readers, so I wanted our
Yeah.
women and girls to relate to these great
Yeah.
texts and the great women who are in them. So many young women have come to me and said, I never read the Mahabharata before I read Palace of Illusions. I was not interested. I did not want to read the Ramayan before I read Forest of Enchantments.
Right.
But now I'm interested in going back and reading the originals so
Yeah.
that I can compare the texts and think about the issues.
Right.
And that makes me really happy because
Yeah.
the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are treasures
Sure.
of our culture
Sure.
and world culture.
Sure.
And if I can make them accessible through
Yeah.
these books
Yeah.
and focus on women, the wonderful women that are in them, that are largely misinterpreted or sometimes forgotten or discounted, then I feel maybe I've done something by God's grace that's worth passing on.
Absolutely. As an author who has added so much to South Asian literature outside of India, in the diaspora, what subjects do you feel like are still missing in our stories? Subjects that maybe you would like to address, or subjects that you would like other authors, other up-and-coming diasporic authors to address?
Well, I think, a lot of my immigrant writing is about the immigrant who comes over,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And that is the space I know best.
Right.
And as the community grows and becomes an older community, how they relate to their children, how the children relate to them, my take is always from that generational aspect.
Right.
I think people are writing, and I would like to see more being written from the point of view of the children.
Sure, sure.
The children who are now bringing up their own children.
Right.
How
right.
do they relate to the whole question of India?
Yeah.
How do they relate to America?
Yeah.
I've done a lot of eavesdropping and spying to get some ideas, but that's the truth that they live. So I would love to see younger writers dealing with, who am I in America?
Sure.
How does my Indianness fit or not fit me?
Right.
How am I going to bring up my children?
Right.
Which parts of my culture are important to pass on, and which ones do I not want?
Sure.
Is it
Sure.
important at all? Maybe I'm now married to someone who's not Indian. Is there going to be a dilution of culture, or is that just part of a healthy, natural outgrowth of immigration?
Sure.
So these are some questions. I think there are also some political questions that we need to address, especially currently, like,
Of course.
who are we in America? How is America looking at its migrants, its immigrants? What are the ways in which things have become newly problematic for us, and what can we do about that?
Sure, sure. It's always interesting. I always tell people, my dad came here when he was 22, and I moved to India when I was 22. So for him, the challenge was, how do I operate in a society where nobody looks like me? And for me, it was, how do I operate in a society where everybody
looks like
me?
you.
So that's the irony of life, right?
Exactly. So and that is so amazing that
Yeah.
you have gone back and
Right.
really, I mean, and at some other point, I want to talk about it.
Yeah.
How did you do it? Because for your dad, it was challenging in one way.
Right.
For you, it is equally challenging, I think, in the other
completely
way.
different way.
So those are the stories that
Right.
I would like to
Right.
see being written.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Auntie. Thank you so much for taking our
Thank
time.
you,
Really
Kovet.
appreciate it.
It's
Thank you.
always a pleasure talking
Thank
to
you.
you.